Can you believe that IHaveWood.coms are even taken? How dare they?
Oh, that's a long one. Come on.
No, you got to make it special. You got to have IHaveHardwood.com.
I've got wood.
Hello, my friends.
Thank you for joining us for the PEBCAK Podcast, a weekly information security show featuring some all-around good people. It is week 23 of 2022. I'm Chris Louis, and happy D-Day, which commemorates the invasion of Normandy Beach in France, which marked the beginning of the end of World War II in Europe. With me, I have my co-host Duke Silver, who just celebrated not one, but two graduations in the family. Congratulations to the Deach family.
Hey, thanks, Chris. I appreciate that. Technically, we are 3 down, 1 to go. Congratulations to Mikey and Celeste. You've officially completed your easiest part of your life.
And we have Glenn Medina, whose favorite movie is Saving Private Ryan. Where are you broadcasting from this week?
Everyone, hi. Thanks for having me back. I'm coming from home this time, so it's great to be back for a week and not traveling as much. I also want to say congratulations to Brian's kids as well as mine. I had a graduate student finish this past month, and then also my middle daughter who got her undergrad bachelor's degree. So, man, happy and excited for both of them.
Which is the one that actually finished second in her class?
The middle daughter.
Damn, you should be proud. I mean, I should be proud of both of them.
You'll
love the other one, the middle daughter, just a little bit more, though.
How'd you know? How did you know? I'm just kidding.
This week, we have our guest, Russ Frum, who is a relatively recent hire here at Zscaler, but not new to podcasting. Russ is a founder and advisor to many organizations dealing with wireless and IoT. Russ, would you like to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Happy to be here. I'm excited to kind of share the kind of niche area that I've been following very closely for a very long time. So I've got a background in traditional telecom, and these new distributed IoT and cellular networks are really, really exciting. And I think with some of the new partnerships they put on with companies like Hewlett Packard, they're probably going to explode in utilization just due to the massive cost savings they have. And I've got lots of interesting companies to point out here. I even put some links here in the show notes to these projects and really how I think they're going to drastically change and lower the cost of wireless communications over the next, I'd say 2 to 5 to 10 years. We'll see how long it takes.
Hey, Russ. Real quick, some housekeeping, and this is so embarrassing, but they always make me ask this. You are not, or nor have you ever been a member of the Nazi American Party, correct?
No, not to my knowledge.
It's a joke, man. It took you so long to answer that.
All right, well, it's not a policy to ask that on this podcast, but I don't know if we'll have to start screening people if that's a serious concern.
But you never know. He may have been part of Team Amber.
Maybe.
Team Amber, right? Right, Russ?
I just call it Team Turd, but you can say Amber. There's a lot of Ambers.
There you go.
Team Turd.
Come on, we have decades of information security experience and are here not just to educate, but to entertain. We've got 4 awesome stories for you this week, so sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. For our opening topic, Russ, I saw in our show notes you put down that you are a DAO member, which stands for Decentralized Autonomous Organization, DAO. My only exposure to DAOs are 2 serious but humorous stories of internet people with too much money trying to buy things. The first was Constitution DAO, who tried to buy an extremely rare original copy of the US Constitution for $40 million US. The second DAO is hoping to raise $4 billion with a B, $4 billion to buy the Denver Broncos, the football team here in America. Last time I recall a professional sports team being sold here in America was C. Ballmer when he bought the LA Clippers for $2 billion from the embattled Donald Sterling. So Russ, what do you think of DAOs being used to purchase extravagant things?
Yeah, I was going to say the next big example is probably buying a bunch of land in the middle of nowhere. they're also good for that. So DAOs have been kind of like, for me, the next evolution of internet memes, of definitely people who maybe have extra stimulus money and want to say, we're going to buy something crazy. So far, they haven't worked out very well. I was thinking of the DAO, I believe was in Colorado, that they bought all these parcels of land, and they've got some very advantageous tax rules over there. So that was exciting at the time. But unfortunately, they bought it and then went, we actually got to get services out there and build these houses. And we didn't really quite think that through, but it might still work out. Interesting that, I'm part of a DAO and also part of the Decentralized Wireless Alliance, which is basically a group of volunteers who say, we're going to vet actual real-world companies and organizations that provide real services to decentralized networks, which is mostly the Helium network is probably the most well-known that people may have heard of, to provide real-world services. DAOs are kind of crazy. I am hopeful that they get figured out over the next 2 years, because there's fundamental issues with managing and leading a large group of people. And a lot of organizations are very worried about giving up a lot of control to DAOs to go ahead and vote on whatever meme issue they want. They could pretty much do just about anything within their authority, depending on how their project is set up. But I'm somewhat hopeful. I see them as a step towards going to a point to where employment itself is kind of more decentralized, more of a group employee owned effort. We've seen this today. We have structures for that, like employee stock ownership plans, employee owned co-ops, things like that. I see it more of an evolution to that form of ownership and control. But I think it's kind of jumping the gun a little bit, because it's fundamentally hard to manage people. It's not easy. And DAOs aren't like some magic solution that, oh wow, it's a DAO, so it's, and we've got these internet coins, it's going to make it easier. But there is usually at least where I've been, there's a vetting process. Sometimes, depending on the DAO, it's just how many coins you own. Other times it's by members only, so they have to vet you to let you in. I've been very lucky. Basically, on my community involvement is how I've been invited to participate with different groups of people who say, we want to get behind this mission, and you basically show your knowledge, and they let you in. It's very kind of open to new people, as long as you've something of value to offer. But my where it's at right now, I think it's got a long way to go. It feels to me like this, like DAOs and kind of the greater kind of crypto movement feels to me a lot like the early 90s of like, what is the internet? What is this going to turn into? None of us really know exactly where it's going to go, but we're going to keep trying. And hopefully downturns like the one we're in right now kind of shake out a lot of the bad elements of those types of movements, people who are going to take advantage of it, and hopefully bring up some actual projects or movements or values that actually survive this. Will it happen? I think it will, but I think it's going to take a lot longer than people think it will. So hopefully that answers your question a little bit. But if you want to dive down into there, I'm happy to answer to you, go into more detail if I can.
I think it would have been more funny if Nicolas Cage bought that copy of the Constitution. I know his movie's about the Declaration of Independence, but wouldn't that have been the ultimate meme move if Nicolas Cage swooped in and bought that last copy of the Constitution that was available?
That'd been pretty sweet. So what's the actual buy-in to get into a DAO nowadays?
It depends on the project. The easiest way to get in is you just spend a lot of money and you get to be a part of it with some of them. Most of them have some type of community voting mechanism to where the current members will vote you in if you kind of come up as a candidate. Your profile is kind of your social profile or how they know you in the community, and you do that by joining their community calls and providing what they think is useful feedback or useful skill sets that they can use. There's one right, here I'm in the upper Midwest, so there's some movements there both in Madison and Milwaukee for different crypto DAOs. I'm not part of any of those regional groups. The only ones I really have experience in are in decentralized wireless, which is mainly with the Threefold DAO, which I really got to become a part of because I'm very active in that project and became a validator. So that's most exciting one I'm in. The rest of them have been a little more boring. Just show up for the call and talk, and hopefully they find it useful.
What's the initial investment requirements, and how many members does a DAO typically have?
They're usually pretty substantial. The one that I'm in, it was the financial part of it was 100,000 of their threefold tokens, but you could also do 1 million of them as well. And those were at the time, I believe, 8 cents each, so fairly substantial.
I guess it's sort of like the question is like what's the requirements to join this golf club? Like there's small ones, there's exclusive ones, there's ones that have high dollar requirements. There's some that the grass on the cemetery next to it is nicer than the grass on the golf course. So I think it just varies depending on how they want to have it, how high class they are, what the requirements are to get in. So I think it just varies.
Is the structure to make money though? Is the structure to make money? Sorry, Brian.
Yeah, so it may not make direct money being on it, but they do direct financial resources in almost all cases. Yes, there's only one where I'm in where it's more of a volunteer basis, and no one really directly profits from it. But usually, yes, they usually set up proposals that they think the entire members of that project need to vote on, and then those go out usually, as they come up, whether it's monthly or quarterly or every couple months or organically, and say, we're going to make this big change to how a portion of how people earn money, vote on this proposal here. And usually to vote on it, you might have to burn some tokens as well, just to prove you actually own some. But there's plenty of drama with those as well, because, obviously people who own the most tend to have the most influence.
Yeah, just like shareholder votes. It's like people that have the most shares, or people that have founders shares that get like 8 votes per share. They're the ones that end up controlling the company.
I think we just create our own.
I agree with you. I second that.
It will be high class, though. I mean, we are not letting the riffraff in here at all.
All right, so you heard it here first. The PEBCAK DAO is going to officially launch coming soon.
Yes, we're buying land, airplanes, maybe even DJ Khaled. I don't know, but we got money to burn, baby.
We already have our own NFTs, so the next logical step is to make our own DAO.
Yes.
There you go. Let's do it.
So Chris, was Steve Ballmer really the last person that did it, or was it Mark Cuban that bought the Dallas Mavs? Who was more recent? I thought Cuban was newer than Steve. No?
You might be correct. There's an easy way to find out.
No,
technically,
Ballmer came after, right?
That's what I'm thinking.
Okay.
I think Cuban's been the owner for a while compared to Steve Ballmer. Well, technically Chelsea Football Club, that one got sold, but here in America, I think the Clippers were the last ones to get sold.
Nobody knows what that means.
The wrong kind of football. Sorry to our international listeners there. All right, for our first topic, I came across an interesting Vice article that details the story of an Australian bartender. His name is Dan Saunders, and through a drunken stupor and sheer dumb luck, he found an exploit in his bank's ATM that gave him practically unlimited money. This might take a little bit to lay out, but again, I guarantee it's worth the payoff at the end. After going unnoticed for 5 months, the 29-year-old bartender had already run through about $1.6 million in stolen money. He threw lavish parties, chartered private jets, and paid off his friends' university fees until, unsurprisingly, the police caught up with him. The exploit happens between 1 and 3 a.m. in the morning when the ATMs go offline. So for some reason, the ATMs in Australia have to take a nap. And every night between 1 and 3 a.m., they go offline on the back end, but they still work on the front end. During that time, Dan found out that he could transfer money, withdraw the money, and it would not be reflected in his account until the next morning. He would just perform an endless loop of cash outs and not have to deal with the consequences as long as he did it between 1 and 3 a.m. The way he got caught was he actually turned himself into the bank. Not that he grew a conscience out of nowhere, but he was having massive anxiety attacks that the police would catch up to him, and he even sought out professional mental help for this, and some people that he reached out to turned him away, saying they just don't know how to advise him on this. He said every time the phone would ring, he would pick up because he thought it was the authorities that caught up with him. Anytime he got a weird knock on the door, he'd like jump up out of bed in a cold sweat because he thought the authorities were about to kick in the door, so just the weight and guilt of it caught up with him, and he turned himself into the bank. After turning himself into the bank, it still took, get this, 2 years. So 2 years after he called the bank and said, I stole $1.6 million from you. 2 years afterwards, that's when the police arrested him. And the judges and the prosecutors were so confused at what he did, he pled guilty, and he only served 1 year in prison. So he got 1 year in prison for stealing $1.6 million. Worth it to you guys?
No. Not $1.6 million. Still not worth it. Duke?
Dan is the true definition of an all-around good guy. He's over there forgiving people student loans. What a nice guy. I love it. I like Dan. Everyone needs a Dan in their life.
No kidding. But he didn't have to pay back the $1.6 million? I mean, he was basically a Robin Hood, right?
Yeah, I don't know if his sentence included restitution or anything. Probably as part of his plea agreement, they just said, let's get this over with. And, he spent the money. He had no money to give. So maybe not.
This is the first time in any show notes that I've actually came across the same article as you without planning. I had read about this, I think, on Sunday night. I was like, oh, that's pretty wild. I didn't think about making it a story, though. Good for you, Chris.
Yeah, good. It's parallel thinking.
Yeah. What do you think, Russ?
I was going to say, when you were talking about like getting like shivers and jumping out of bed, like so nervous, man, sounds like I think security engineers over the weekend over the latest exploit. Like, oh, not again. Here we go.
Just waiting for that call at midnight.
Now for MSDT. Come on.
Yeah.
I can tell you Chris was up all night last night shivering and waking up in a cold sweat. So
yeah.
I wonder if he, all right, okay, two things. Number one, I wonder if he was freaking out all 2 years. And then number two, what kind of douchebag move is it to arrest him 2 years later? It's he's already turned himself in once. Just call him up. Why do you have to actually book him? I don't understand that.
So he called the bank and told them we had done this. And the bank says, this is a police matter now. We're not allowed to talk to you. And then he just sat around for 2 years, waiting for the shoe to drop.
Did he continue to do the hack, though, during those 2 years?
No.
He was kind of done.
He was done. Yeah, he knew what he was doing was wrong. He actually said he has I've got a duffel bag with $80,000 in it. Come pick it up if you want it. And the bank couldn't bother to send someone out to pick up this duffel bag full of cash.
But if we pick it up, then we have to admit that you stole it.
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking. The other thing I could think of, they had a Twistless story, and I saw, there's been articles about this as well, is people trying to buy up medical debt. Trying to buy other people's debt and forgive it. I'm like, that's the only thing I could think of to make this an even nicer guy.
Yeah, that's a good one. Medical debt and it's student loans and things like that. So it's
I don't understand how the bank just couldn't figure this out. 5 months, most likely they're publicly traded, or at least you would think there had to be some type of accounting snafu somewhere that would come up with this. Hey, for some reason we're missing a bunch of cash. And no one knew why. And by the way, I can only withdraw $700 at a time out of the ATM. His homeboy, per day. He must have just been this visit. Either he has the unlimited withdrawal limit, or just a knack for waking up at 1 o'clock in the morning and yanking $1,000 out every time.
Yeah, he did it for a while. He got $1.6 million at, let's say, $500 or $800 at a time. That takes a while. I don't think that's from 1 to 3 in the morning. So he only had a 2-hour window, right, to do that.
Bank withdrawal limits or ATM withdrawal limits might be different in Australia. Maybe one of our Australian listeners can let us know. But yeah, I think he said one night he pulled out $2,000. So it might be, the withdrawal limits might be different than what we're used to here.
It would take me 6.2 years to get to 1.6 million. Definitely not worth it.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, that's the other way you could pose it. If you could get paid, so the ATM withdrawal limit here in the U.S. I think is $600. So if you could guarantee to get $600 tax free, but you had to wake up at 1 a.m. every night and drive to the bank, would you do it?
I would go find a bank that had a series of ATM machines next to each other, so that way I could just hit one after the next.
You'd have to have multiple accounts then. There's an idea.
No, because
maybe
they weren't talking to each other. Maybe that's the loopholes, that they weren't talking to each other.
Oh, that is true. They do shut down. Yep, you're correct.
What a dummy. The bank, not the guy.
Yes, the guy and the bank. So, I'm sorry.
I was reading the comments in the article, and some people were saying, like, $1.6 million, that's a rounding error for most banks. Like, if he said nothing, he might have gotten away with it.
Do you think after a while he started like wearing a mask and a disguise every time he went to the ATM?
Probably, or at some point he's just like, well, if they catch up, they catch up,
Yeah.
I just want to know what in his consciousness that made him go, I've got to go, fess this up. Like something must have triggered him to just go, I'm done. I can't do this anymore.
I think it's just all the anxiety. Like every time you get a phone call, every time you get a knock on the door, anytime a strange car follows you, just being on edge the entire time. Like that's got to take its toll on you.
Sure.
I'm going to go do something illegal just so I can get that feeling. I don't think I've ever felt that before.
Yeah, I've never.
Where's the square?
You did steal a soda from Five Guys, though. Does that count?
Well, it depends on which way you're looking at it. And yeah, I slept like a baby that night.
I've never. Yeah,
up every 2 hours screaming.
I've never sped down the freeway and go, there's a cop. Let me go turn myself in. So.
Yeah. So I guess the general consensus from you guys is $1.6 million for 1 year of prison. You guys wouldn't do it.
Turn that into a B, maybe.
Well, 1 year of American prison. Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is funny. We actually had that on we talked about on the last episode about American prisons versus other countries. Like, I guess, it's no walk in the park, American prisons, but yeah, it could be worse, could be better. All right, for our second story, we have a listener submitted story that reports an airport in Sao Paulo, Brazil started showing, shall we call it, graphic adult content on these screens, which normally display the flight schedules and travel alerts. Apparently, hackers found a way into the audiovisual system of the airport, no doubtedly through some type of open port or unpatched vulnerability. Video surfaced on Twitter of travelers both laughing at the display and also trying to shield their children's eyes from the graphic content. I've seen this happen on things like menus and digital signage when you go to a food court and the owners leave things on like Chromecast, or they leave default credentials on the TV and then you can just display whatever you want on the TV. And this is somewhat related to a senior prank someone did last year when he hacked into every TV and projector in the school district and rickrolled the entire school district, which was about 11,000 students, as his senior prank.
I'll tell you what, those airport terminals were getting pounded.
Wah, 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 wah.
It's a little early for the dad jokes again. Here we go. But I thought... Go ahead.
So my 13-year-old daughter tells us that one of the kids hacked the school's audio system, and they played the song. I don't even know who sings it, but the song's called Deep Throat. And like two things happened with me. Like, number one, she's like, it was so funny. I'm like, what? Do you even know what that means? Like, I don't even want to know the answer to that question. Like, and then I went out and heard it. I'm like, ooh, wow, that's pretty raunchy.
Do you know what it means? So
I'm just curious. Does everybody here have like a high school or college hacking story? I mean, I can share mine. I mean, when I was in college, for some reason, like NetSend was unrestricted. So
I did the same thing.
Ooh, NetSend, yeah.
It
was so easy. I was like, how is this not locked down? So I sent a message to everyone who was logged in the entire college system at University of Wisconsin. So luckily I just got a slap on the wrist. But I hear now, like at school districts, people get like expelled for it. So now I get a little more scared.
Dude, I did the same thing, but I had wrote a Visual Basic script that anytime you opened up Excel, it would send a NetSend message to everyone on the network. It took them forever to figure it out. It was on every machine.
Well, back when I was going to school, we still had typewriters, so
no NetSend for Glenn.
No NetSend, but they were still teaching COBOL.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, and in my high school we had Macs, and they had the typical lockdown software, like you can't install games, can't do this, can't do anything fun. They weren't internet connected at the time, but I do remember a bunch of us going through, like scrolling through temp files and everything on the computer, looking for the logout password, and then sure enough, in one of these config files or these temporary file dumps, it was the uninstall password in clear text. And then once that started circulating, we were able to unlock the computers and do whatever we want with them.
Yeah.
That and then be able to boot into safe mode. Remember that? Just hold the shift keys.
Yeah.
So I was a teacher's aide, and we had an Apple IIe sitting in the room, and my instructor, or the teacher that I was TAing for, she had the password underneath the keyboard, so it wasn't that difficult. That was
Or
bad
OPSEC.
OPSEC. Yeah, that was really bad OPSEC.
She's one of them.
But it's not like that computer was connected to anything, just power. It didn't have internet or anything like that. So,
You guys remember the street signs, like the road work ahead, and somebody had programmed it to say zombies ahead or whatever?
Yeah.
Did you guys ever do that one?
So first of all, admitting to that would likely be a crime. But no, I've never done that. I have read that there are ways to reset the password. They're hard-coded passwords, and there's easy ways to get into them. But I personally have not warned people about zombies ahead.
I know Russ did.
Oh man, so I worked in telecom with the machines those connected to, and they were just like these old at the time Windows 2000 machines, and we were like, man, I really wish we could turn these off, but then all the road signs and all the ankle cuffs will stop working, so got to keep them going.
Fun fact, I don't know if this is still true to this day, but the heavy equipment, like bulldozers and hose and whatever, I forget the backhoes and whatnot, usually you can find the keys in the visor. So if you just walk up to it, pretty much anyone can drive it. At least that's how it was in the small town I grew up in.
same. Still there.
Yep.
We had a big grater that we played around with in the in a little town next to mine, and it was so much fun. We threw so much dirt up in the air.
I read, I don't know if this is still true, but I read for the longest time, companies like Caterpillar and John Deere, they never put VINs or serial numbers on their equipment because they said this thing is so large, it's impractical for anybody to steal it. So they didn't think they needed to uniquely identify it. I'll have to look that one up, but I thought that was interesting. So yeah, you leave the keys there, someone just drives off with it, and you say, officer, I cannot identify it. There's no serial number or VIN on it.
3 miles per hour.
Yeah.
Look at that backhoe going, man. Wow.
30. Try 3.
Yeah, it's like that scene out of
I think they track
Waterboy when he
maple
rides the
syrup
lawnmower.
closer than that. Jeez.
There's syrup? How do they track syrup?
By the barrel, there was the famous syrup heist up in Canada.
Oh, the maple
There
syrup
stole
heist.
millions of
Yeah,
dollars of syrup.
that's right. Yeah, was it from the Strategic Maple Syrup Reserve in Canada?
No way.
Yeah.
Get out of here. That's a lie. Is there such a thing?
100% true. That is 100% true. Like the U.S. has a Strategic Petroleum Reserve that they only tap in, they're only supposed to tap in it in a time of war. Canada does have a Strategic Maple Syrup Reserve.
Could you imagine like a whole bunch of Aunt Jemima bottles sitting somewhere? Just kidding.
I mean, what's the thought process that, okay, you stole 100,000 barrels worth of this Strategic Maple Syrup. Like, how do you monetize that? What's the thought process there? Like, who's going to buy this? Is Waffle House? Are you going to show up with barrels of this stuff?
No, I think it's more of a, is this a nuisance? Like doing the net send thing, right? There's no real value to it. Just doing it to be funny.
It was a real crisis in Canada. I remember when that was going on. It was no joke.
It was a crisis, really?
Yeah. Just imagine
Did they
someone
use it as
stealing
lotion over there? I don't know. Another form of KY jelly?
Just imagine someone stealing like 100,000 barrels of petroleum here in the U.S. Like that'd be a national crisis.
But how?
Happens
How would you
happens
take
every
that?
day by the politicians in the states that charge the extra taxes. No one ever complains.
All right, fair enough. For our third story, the 2019 MGM hack. This was a chain of hotels and hospitality in the hospitality industry. Well, the hack turns out much worse than originally thought. The original story, which broke in 2020, reported that 10 million records were stolen, and now it can be it's thought to be somewhere between 24 million and 142 million records were stolen as a result of that hack. The records were dumped for free on Telegram last week. As we've discussed in the past, travel records such as hotel stays and airline records can be a treasure trove of information for intelligence agencies who are trying to ascertain the movement of people to help track down spies or identify assets they could potentially turn. Other notable travel breaches involve British Airways, Starwood Properties, Marriott, and the list goes on.
So I think if you found my information in there, it'd be like, man, this Brian Deitch guy sure does like to order off the inline dining menu, right? A lot of chicken wings over there and Red Bulls, peanut M&Ms. That's about it.
He also likes to order movies. I don't know why. What's the ratings of these movies that he's ordering for?
That's you, Glenn. We all know how you roll.
Something about midgets and animals.
You're called small people, Glenn.
Yeah, get it right.
Sorry.
Yeah, so how we just reached data breach fatigue. So somebody dumped 142 million records for free on Telegram and just nobody bats an eye.
I don't think that's a thing anymore, right? No one really cares. But I do. Now I got to go look and see if I was part of that data breach. Is MGM going to go out and reach out to folks that were affected by this as well, like all the other data breaches? Or is this just no one cares anymore?
The only thing that could be possibly useful in there is trying to figure out who killed Tupac, because that was right there at the corner of the MGM casino, and maybe the killer stayed there. Never know. Let's cross-reference it, guys. If you ever needed a reason to get Telegram, there it is.
Yeah, go grab the records and let the internet sleuths do their thing. They never caught the guy, huh? Or gal or group that killed Tupac or B.I.G.
No,
they catch either.
No. Neither.
Rest in peace.
And they didn't find Jimmy Hoffa either, so.
Isn't he buried on the 50-yard line in some stadium, allegedly?
Allegedly.
Yeah, but I think this also goes back to other notable breaches like T-Mobile and Twitch. It's like, how can you not know someone was in the network, first of all? And second of all, when MGM disclosed the breach, how did they not know that 142 million records were stolen until they just ended up on Telegram?
Poor logging, probably. They probably just running a bunch of just next generation firewalls that are just hot garbage. That's what I'm guessing. Probably built by Cisco or Pan. They'll probably have to edit this out.
I was going to say that the breach notification service, otherwise known as the FBI, must have failed them.
Yeah, that's true. The FBI or Brian Krebs.
Yeah, are we on Krebs?
How did this one go? I'm just reading about this. I don't remember seeing this in February when it happened. Is this just getting released now?
No, I think it got overshadowed by the pandemic. I think because it happened right at the beginning of 2020, then the pandemic broke and probably just got overshadowed by it. But yeah, this was, I mean, even 10 million records, that was still a fairly sizable breach. But that's why we do the podcast. We want to just let people know out there, if you're staying at an MGM, your data's probably out there.
Well, who hasn't stayed at an MGM resort? I mean, they own most of the strip, right?
They do, yeah.
Did I ever tell you guys my story about being there on New Year's Eve on year 2000?
Thought we talked about our Y2K stories.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I think you just said you were like drinking with your friends or something.
So, I was drinking with my friends. We had the strip. So we decided to make the trip. And the goal was to actually go see where Tupac was shot, right? So we went out to the street and we're like, yeah, we're going to pour out our 40.
Or did you want to do your own investigation?
No, it was more than that, right? So the streets were filled, like fireworks, the whole 9 yards. And homeboy decides that he's going to climb up the street pole for the light, right? And he's just going up there, not like a street light, but the lights that tell you to go or stop. And everyone's cheering him on.
Brilliant
and then he
idea.
falls. Yeah, and then he's just dead. It's game over. Very sobering moment for everyone there.
But you didn't know this person. This person wasn't traveling with you. It was just some drunk guy on the strip.
Some drunk guy on the strip. Yeah, he went to go see Jesus that night.
So yeah,
he poured out a 40 for two people.
So you saw a guy die on the strip on New Year's Eve.
Yeah.
So how come we didn't tell the story when we talked about our Y2K stories?
I know. What's up with that?
I don't know.
Like Chris Young says I was babysitting an exchange server. I don't want to tell you how old I was, so I won't give away what I was doing.
You were still in high school.
And then Brian's like, oh yeah, I just drank with my friends and counted down. Like there's no mention of somebody dying in front of you.
I forgot all about it. It's one of those things.
Yeah. I remember the story, but not on the PEBCAK, so Yeah. Are you sure you weren't there trying to reenact the whole Tupac scene?
I'm sure. I think I have a picture of me laying down in the street. Probably dig that one up too.
Yeah.
Let's get Russ's take on this. What did you do on December 31st, 1999? Where were you at Y2K?
Oh, I was just hoping that I could still play StarCraft the next morning. That was about it. I wasn't too concerned. I wasn't old enough to, unfortunately I wasn't old enough or skilled enough to be an on-contract programmer or on call for that night. I know I've heard many stories of people who did very well with Y2K prep or Y2K Overwatch, but the next morning it was like a big sigh of relief, except for maybe the preppers who spent all their money and nothing happened.
Yeah. If
Well,
you could program in Fortran or Cobalt, one of those ancient languages, assembly, like you could name your price. Like all these programs had to get rewritten.
I remember all the TV shows were like planes are going to fall out of the sky. I'm like,
Yeah,
I hope
nuclear
not, all right.
meltdown, and yeah.
Yeah.
I think it was China, maybe. There's one country where they forced all the executives of the airlines to be on an airplane at the stroke of midnight, just to give them some incentive to make sure the planes don't fall out of the sky. So I think that properly incentivized them to make sure everything was working.
Can't fall out of the sky if they're all grounded.
Yeah.
Could you imagine that being done with prisons where the wardens had to sit in the middle of the
the
jail and the doors buzz open at midnight? You're like, uh-oh.
All right, for our last topic, and it will be a rotating topic every week. This week we're going to talk about one of our favorite topics here, privacy. We got a user submission of this site from the Mozilla Foundation called Privacy Not Included. So thank you, Gary, for that submission. This site compiles privacy information for the software and hardware that you buy. I thumbed through it and I was actually surprised at some of the apps and what they collect. Like, for example, the Calm app. So I use that for mindfulness. I use it for meditation. And when I looked it up, it says they do not sell your data directly, but they do allow their advertising partners to collect certain device identifiers and electronic network activity via their services to show ads that are targeted towards your interest on other platforms. So again, that's that whole cross-app tracking. So an app that claims to be, for your mental health, and they don't sell your information, but they do sometimes allow their advertising partners to take a peek at your information to cater better ads to you. So I have a link here. You should definitely check it out. Look at some of the services and some of the devices that you own. And it actually lays it out really nicely. It says, this is what's in the privacy policy. These are the exceptions to it. Does this thing have a mic? Does it have a camera? And it's actually really well done.
Yeah, I think the website's pretty dang cool. I plugged in some webcam stuff that we use and, found out back in 2019, there was a huge data leak and 2.4 million customers' information was lost of these 10-second clips that were thrown out there for someone else to watch for their cloud service. It was great.
So are these sites that have privacy or have potential to leak privacy?
It's both. So there's like a scorecard at the bottom. So there's a privacy tab and it says, can it snoop on me? Does it have a camera? Does it have a microphone? Does it track your location? What data does the company collect? How does this company use it? So they scrolled through like the privacy policy for all these apps, that 100-page T's and C's that you just never have time to read. Well, someone actually went through it and compiled a summary of all that on this site. And then there's also a crowdsourcing feature at the bottom. There's a slider that says, do you think this device is creepy? So there's a scale from not creepy to super creepy. You can vote on it, and then there's a crowdsourced score for all these devices as well.
So does anyone find it odd that the Apple products are on here that were supposed to be built on privacy, along with Signal, which was supposed to be somewhat secure, but security and privacy are two totally different things? Yes, no, odd.
I looked at the Signal one, and for the Signal one, I if I remember correctly, it was they said they could pull a WhatsApp, basically. Like at any given moment, they could pull a WhatsApp and say, we're going to start collecting this information. We're going to collect metadata from your trend, your messages and the like. So I don't think there was anything inherently bad about Signal. They just said they have the potential, just like what WhatsApp did.
So on the app, Can It Snoop on Me says camera, yes. Microphone, yes. Tracks location, no. So, okay, great. No tracking location. But the fact that it could be used to reverse and look at your camera and microphone is the bad thing about that, right? From a privacy standpoint. I don't know. I gotta read through this. But great site. I love it. This is good. I'm a little shocked about Apple.
Yeah. I like the tips to protect yourself. So if you're looking at an Apple Watch, it's like, hey, go to the app and go to privacy health and turn that off. Little things like that. Yeah, it's actually pretty cool. Yeah, good job, Gary.
Yeah, thank you, Gary.
Yeah. I'm going to go through this list.
Yeah, Gary. Can you tie this to the Meyer attack framework, please?
Does Meyer attack cover privacy? I guess information disclosure. Yeah, because one of the attack vectors and one of the vulnerabilities that you have to disclose is information disclosure. So quite possibly.
So, we talked to Guy, was it last week or the week before, and he doesn't care 2 cents less. He doesn't care at all about privacy, right? So has that changed any of your views about our discussion since then? Because I kind of look at it now going, well, I guess they got it. So what does it really matter at this point? I mean, if it's not hacked somewhere, it's going to be hacked, right? Thoughts?
I mean, I look at it as there's no reason for you to put any more information out there than is required. I'm not. See, I say things like I'm not hyper paranoid because I'm a nobody and nobody's going to track me. But then I also take precautions. Like before I post images, I also screen grab it to remove any EXIF data on it. So it's like, there's a line between paranoia and good OPSEC.
Yeah, I do like the idea of taking a screenshot. And so that way there isn't EXIF, especially after watching the Johnny Depp trials. That's pretty important. So,
yeah, I was able to track Brian's exact location because he sent us a video of him doing donuts in the snow one time.
On purpose. I know how to turn that off. You're not special.
So you wanted me to know you were in Flagstaff that weekend?
Yeah. Obviously it's not going to snow in freaking Mesa, bro. Come on now. By the way, you can sort on this website of privacy not included. I say the first one that comes up that's probably the most shocking is the Peloton bike.
Is that shocking, though? Is that shocking?
Well, for how much you're spending, you wouldn't think that they'd be, selling your shit. Whoops. You don't think that it would be, hawking our stuff out when you have a $1,500 bike or whatever it costs.
They're in dire financial straits, man. They can make money any way they can. And they're about to go under.
Yeah, I was gonna say I own a Peloton, and I just canceled my my subscription here and just turned it into a regular dumb smart bike. They're not doing so hot, and they're raising their prices, so definitely makes the people you got a premium Apple product, and they're like, oh, actually they've got all this data, and if they really needed to, here's another revenue stream.
Yeah, maybe Broadcom will buy them just for support.
And only support the top 1,000 riders out there.
That's right. 600.
Yeah, 600.
During the pinnacle of lockdown, we bought an elliptical, and now we're to that point where we need to sell it and get rid of it. I've taken the price down to $200, and nobody still wants the damn elliptical. I'm about to make it free and see if anybody will actually pick it up. There is an abundance of ellipticals and treadmills that are out there. If you're buying right now, it is definitely a buyer's market.
Probably for anything pandemic related, all the stuff that we had a shortage of. Maybe there's a run on toilet paper right now. All those people that stocked up cases and cases of it. Maybe now's the time to buy.
I was like, hope you guys can eat that because I don't know what you're gonna do with it.
That's typical though, right? Everybody buys gym equipment on the 1st of January. And then 6 months later, they realize they're not doing anything with it, and they're selling it, 3 to 5 months down the line. So
yeah, that's true. Yeah, that is part of the cyclical, and then there's also the gym memberships that spike in January, and then now the gyms are deserted.
But I think that touches on a really big point there. You guys have probably heard the same thing, that the rumors that supply chain is starting to get a little better, and that a lot of retailers are going to be overstocked soon, and that potentially this is going to be like the best Thanksgiving Day sale we've had in like 20 years because they're so overstocked with stuff and need to get rid of it.
Yeah, I can get behind that. That sounds like a reason to go stand in a line.
I would love for construction products to come down in price because I got a kitchen remodel I got to get to. So,
well, the price of
Have
lumber
you guys ever
has
done...
come down quite a bit since the
What's that?
pandemic high. The price of lumber has come down a lot since the pandemic high. We're almost back to pre-pandemic levels.
Good, because man, I bought 5 sheets of plywood and it cost me $80 each. That was the most ridiculous amount of cost for plywood that I've ever had to pay for. So
I'm gonna open up my own like lumber place, and it's gonna be called I've Got Wood. So many people come by.
Oh, Brian. And on that note, we continue to get great comments about our dad joke of the week.
Dad joke of the week.
This week, our guest Russ is up.
Yeah. I was going to say, what does a sequel statement say when it sees 2 tables at a restaurant? May I join you?
Wah. That was good. That was both a dad joke and a tech joke.
Yeah. Thanks for not letting us down. Coming in strong. Good old Russ.
All right. I try.
All right, to wrap things up, you may need an NFT to be partial owner of the Broncos. Sometimes crime does pay. Be prepared to shield your eyes if you're around vulnerable TVs. It was much worse than originally reported, and privacy is not necessarily included in the products and software you buy, so buyer beware. That's all we have for this week. We hope you enjoyed this week's episode. You can find us all on LinkedIn. Links will be in the description. Follow us on Instagram at PEBCAK Podcast. Thank you to all our listeners and subscribers who rated us 5 stars in the iTunes Store and Spotify and left us a review. We appreciate you all spreading the word to help grow the show. The best way to find us is to search for the PEBCAK Podcast on your favorite podcast listening app. For my co-hosts Brian Deitch and Glenn Medina, and our guest Russ Frump, I'm Chris Louie. Thanks for listening. We'll see you all next week, and as always, have a nice day.
Thanks, everyone.
Can you guys believe... Yeah, thank you. Can you believe that IHaveWood.com is already been taken? How dare they?
Oh, that's a long one. Come on.
No, you got to make it special. You got to have IHaveHardwood.com.
I've got wood. Maybe I'll try that one.